Yeah, response video to Hythloday, who's made 1.5 videos, 2 videos, whatever, something like that. It's these two here. Ooh, well, the aim isn't right. They're right there. But anyway, so he shows us the diagram of the asymmetry, and he talks an awful lot about nouns and adjectives and all this other crap. Sorry, but and you know, okay, fine. You know, the wordplay just goes on forever and ever, and it all depends on the arguments about whether you call this thing the bad stuff that happens to us, you call it harm, or whether you call it a negative conscious state, a more negative conscious state, a causing someone to go from this state to something less this, something that way, towards pain and suffering and unsatisfaction. That it's better for things to go that way towards satisfaction. Satisfaction, fun, resolve the pain, pain going away, good, right? Pain getting worse, bad. That's the concept, right? And that's the, ironically, the nature of the asymmetry, is that what you have, what the asymmetry reveals is that you're not dealing with an actual concept of good. The good in life is only, the best thing you can do in life is prevent somebody else from being horribly horribled, right? I mean, if you can prevent somebody from getting hit by a car, half burned in a fire, or something awful, just awful, paralyzed. If I could prevent Superman, George Reeves, whatever his name was, from falling off his horse, if I could have thrown a pillow down, these are goods, because yes, there's this anguish and harm and suffering and pain that doesn't have to be experienced. The sad part would be that if he didn't get paralyzed and he lived, then he would have had to watch his wife die of lung cancer. So that would have sucked. But really, the point of the asymmetry essentially is to show that it's the need that everything's made out of. That there is no good. There's just less bad. And that's the nature of the asymmetry. So if you change the asymmetry to torture, and you said torture's bad, and you said stopping torture is good, and preventing torture is good, and then your asymmetry, the argument is now let's pretend it doesn't exist. Now let's go to the world where people don't exist. Now there is no more torture. So that's good. Because all the torture that happened doesn't happen. So that's a good. We should prevent a whole bunch of torture from happening. And now let's look at the good element, which was preventing or eliminating torture. Well, you've already done that. So it's already done. It can't possibly be a bad to be missing something you've already done. You can't miss something you've already accomplished. So it can't be a bad not to have people preventing torture or stopping torture. You get it? There's the asymmetry. Is when you go back to the other way and you negate the things existing. So they exist here, and you have a balance between good and bad. And when they exist over here in the non-existent plane, there is no balance. Because one of the components, the component that would have been the reciprocal bad, is now gone. Because the bad was eliminated by eliminating the bad. Because the good was only made out of the fact that you could eliminate a bad. So you could look at it as the asymmetry like life is crime. So crime is bad. Okay, so that's what life has, crime. Let's say crime was the bad thing. There was no suffering, but there was crime. Crime was bad. Okay. Obviously because it causes suffering, but let's just pretend it's just bad because it's bad. We know it's bad. We agree it's bad. And then crime fighting is good. So there's the symmetry. Switch it over to the non-existent plane, and what happens to the zero out equation kind of thing? Well, the equation breaks again, because yeah, no criminals is good, but no criminal stoppers? Can't possibly be bad, because yeah, it's good that there's no crime to stop. So how can not having crime stoppers in a world where there's no crime be a bad thing? You can't possibly need crime stoppers, right? So there's the problem. So the dilemma with the asymmetry is that it reveals the fact that there is no true good here on Earth. There really isn't. It's illusions of progression from, so even take it to the extreme of perfection. So let's say perfection is the standard. So the absence of perfection is bad, and the existence of perfection is good. You have the same dilemma, right? Because switching it over, the absence of the imperfect state is good, and the absence of the perfect state is not bad, because you don't need it now. You see, without the need, there is no concept of perfection. You can't write, I said this in one of my recent videos, but you can't really write me a scenario of utopia that really makes any sense, any durable sense, because we know the nature of the beast. And the nature of the beast is we get off on the gratification of a negative state. So you really do have to impose the need first. You have to make the thing hungry before eating is satisfying. And yeah, desire is a tricky one. I put it in this gray area, because desire doesn't feel as, when it's just at a moderate level, it's almost fun to want. But I would argue that that's a minor part of existence, and that illusion is that. It's an illusion of our perception, that we're really deprivated. It's really a negative state to be in, and you're only getting off on it because of the just even imagining the gratification. And again, it's that elevation of state. And so it elevates your state even to imagine better when you're in lesser. I mean, that might be part of what makes depressions worse, is when you can't imagine escape. That's when depression really gets depressing. Yeah. When you can't feed any element of the hunger, the need. So anyway, that's, I think, the nature of the asymmetry, is just a realization that the good components of life are not absolute goods. They're goods relative to a condition of the human organism, and they're really going from states that are bad to less bad. That's really what we're doing functionally. And this absolute good, I don't think, can be described in any real sense. It's like the absolute good that's being missed by the Martians. We don't even cognify a real perception of it, because I would argue if we did, we'd have a lot more appreciation for the people who never have been, the billions of people that could have been, if we were more responsible in our use of resources and all that kind of stuff. We would be encouraging people to have every baby possible, because all those people have all this potential to do something called good. And we don't perceive it that way. And I think we don't. And it's certainly not as obvious as our fear of the creation of the monstrosity. The human monstrosity is a real fear, real loud in our ears. We can hear those screams for a long distance. And the laughter of the happy pretend human, it's just that. It can travel no distance. It really can't. It has no real weight. And I think our behavior proves that. I think our conversation proves that. I think our movies prove that. I think the narratives we talk to each other with prove that there is a much more visceral, real, tangible connection to the reality that harm is bad, and very little reality to this idea that bliss is an actual good, beyond the fact that it's not harm. That's where bliss gets its value, is that it's not harm. And that's why non-existence has value, is because it's not harm. Just like bliss. So anyway, it's my effort at contextualizing. But I think that's the nature of the argument, is that it just reveals that good is only good in the context of desire and hunger and need. And if you take those things away, you're going to have a hard time coming up with something called good. You have to need something for something to be good.